everyone, Brandon Jones here to talk to you about E3 2017, specifically things that I got to check out a month ahead of E3 2017 as an E3 judge. This is part 2 of a 3-part series. If you missed part 1, I talked about a bunch of fun independent games that I got to see that week. Now I'm going to talk about some bigger games that you might have already heard of that various embargoes have lifted, and so a lot of this information might not be cutting edge, might not be something that you are finding out at this very minute, but it will be my perspective, and it will be something, basically my positioning toward the official E3 2017 Easy Allies voting for the, official awards that are presented. That is the grand honor that we have been given, having Easy Allies represented on the panel of judges for E3 2017. First big game that I want to talk about that I got to see and unfortunately not play at Judges Week was Far Cry 5. Mike Huber and I go into this appointment expecting it to be Assassin's Creed. It's not Assassin's Creed, it's Far Cry. I love Far Cry. I don't love Far Cry as much as I love Assassin's Creed, but I do enjoy Far Cry. I played a little bit of Far Cry 3, played a lot of the original Far Cry, and absolutely adored the last Far Cry, number 4. And so, very much looking forward to what's going to happen in Far Cry 5. And I was very surprised by the announcement of Far Cry 5. There's a lot of stuff that they are still going to be revealing. I think there might be some gameplay snippets that I saw that maybe you're not going to see until the Ubisoft press conference. I have not been directly following all the stuff that they have been releasing because they showed us a lot. But I think it's a very interesting game. I think Far Cry will always be a very over-the-top franchise. And so I think it's always going to be interesting in some way who they choose as their villain. I'm trying to think. It's something ever since, Far Cry 3 that they definitely focused on. And it's an interesting thing for, a shooter franchise, or really any franchise, to focus on, how different a shooter can be depending on who your ultimate antagonist is. And I think, having a really good antagonist is integral to a successful shooter. I mean, you guys know me. If you don't, hi, I'm Brandon. But if you do, I like camping. I like hiking. I love the wilderness. One thing that they definitely focused on at this event was beauty, that with every Far Cry game, they definitely want to show off, pick an environment. You kind of know where you are, but they will change the name, and so you could kind of be anywhere, but it is, inspired by a particular area. And so I'm excited to go to Montana. I'm excited to drive around Montana. I'm excited to fly around Montana. But specifically, I love the survival aspect of it. I like that, you're going to be in a situation that could potentially look very, docile and serene. You're in, very beautiful country. You're on American soil. You're in a place that you would previously think, would not be a war zone. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that kind of isolation. I'm looking forward to a fight to reclaim land like that. And I'm looking forward to kind of blurring the lines between what I am typically used to seeing as enemies. It's interesting, fighting games and, a lot of shooters, you play like Halo and it's like, okay, we're blue and you're red. Or you even play like in Far Cry 4, they had like very specific uniforms. And so I could tell like, those were rebels because they're purple and those are the bad guys because they're dark blue. And it's interesting going into this game and being like, okay, well, that guy has like jeans and a hoodie, so is that like a bad guy? And so it's gonna be interesting maybe having moments where you'll run into a mall or some kind of like outside shopping district. There's a bunch of civilians, and it kind of is dabbling into places that Call of Duty is kind of dipped its toe in a little bit in some very uncomfortable, bizarre social situations. And so I'm not saying that Far Cry 5 is handling all of this delicately. Far Cry 5, again, as I opened, is an extremely over-the-top franchise, and so whatever they do is going to be very glorified. But that's an interesting game there, Far Cry 5. And so kudos to Ubisoft for taking some risks there and doing something different. I'm curious to see how that game shapes up. I will be reviewing the hell out of that game. Played Sonic Mania, and I'm here to tell you that I am not that versed in Sonic. But I enjoyed me some Sonic Mania. That is a fun video game. There were lots of different options of stuff that you could do. There was lots of different levels. The demo was very, it wasn't like I was playing like one level and then going to another. Even if you died, or failed a mission, you could go back and try other levels. And so there was a lot of Sonic Mania to play, and I played a lot of it, and I enjoyed a lot of it. I think I wasn't good enough at Sonic games, and it's okay. I'll admit that now. But whenever I would like get stuck, or not stuck, but whenever I would like stop, you know, I'd be like on a roll. I'm like, yeah, I'm running and I'm going in circles and flipping around. I hit a spring and I'm flying over there, and then I would just hit like a wall, or, you know, not realize I had to jump at a specific moment, or like a bad guy would pop out. But I had a little bit of time to play a lot of Sonic Mania, and so I got to play levels, you know, 2 or 3 times. And that third time, it, you know, started to click, especially when you have this game that takes all of the best moments of Sonic and, you know, really does this kind of like masterclass of levels that feels like I've played this level before, but I'm really enjoying this, and there's all sorts of crazy surprises and tools that I'm not used to. I don't know how much of that game is specifically new, but that definitely felt like a polished game, and it's always nice to have a throwback, and it's always nice to come and talk to you and report positively on a Sonic game. How good does that feel? Lego Marvel Super Heroes 2 I played. It's interesting, Lego Marvel. Lego anything is interesting at this point because I'm so down to play any Lego game. I skipped things like the second Indiana Jones game. I skipped The Hobbit because I wasn't necessarily like a super big fan of those movies. So there are Lego games that I have not played before. Lego City Undercover I haven't finished. I love Lego games, and Lego Marvel Superheroes is Lego Lord of the Rings is my personal favorite, but I think on paper, if you're to do like a top 10 list, I think Lego Marvel Superheroes makes a really good #1 because it was when they really, you know, started to dabble in first-person environments. You could just fly around, and really just had a fantastic collection of characters. And so it's kind of a no-brainer. It's an exciting franchise to see continue, not just Lego, obviously, but specifically Lego Marvel Superheroes. Fun to get a Lego Marvel Superheroes announcement when we're still waiting on, you know, packs for Lego Dimensions. And what I played was great. But it's interesting that I'm so into what the person has to say. I'm so into the team explaining this game to me, but I'm kind of tuning out because I'm so into it. Like I know I'm gonna get this, and I know that, I mean, it's like one of the big things we got to demo was Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm like, right, Guardians of the Galaxy, it makes sense. And there were some Marvel references in there that I didn't get. Looks like it's gonna have a lot of different crazy characters. Looks like it is going to be everything that the other game was and more. But I don't know, I guess it's just like the inevitability of it. And so if you are a fan of Lego Marvel Superheroes, this is an absolute no-brainer. One of my favorite things that they showed off was Star-Lord I couldn't figure out how to do it while I was playing it, but Star-Lord can put on his headphones and listen to music, and like a song will come up, and you'll still hear the action in the background, but he'll just be kind of like jamming and shooting and like walking around. And I think that's like the best thing about those games is really just those like fun character interactions. And obviously the extent of the character library. Just got to dabble in the Guardians. They were very fun, but I'm curious to, you know, check out Spider-Gwen and all the different, like, it looks like there's like several different Spider-Men in this Lego Marvel Superheroes. And this was Warner Brothers, so at the same event I played Middle-earth Shadow of War. I loved the first Middle-earth. I enjoyed the combat. I just loved like sprinting across a field and surprising a couple of orcs that were just walking around and cutting both their heads off and then just keeping on running towards wherever I was going. There's bigger fish to fry. This was tricky, this demo that we had to do. Basically, I believe you have seen trailers. You'll probably see more of the demo specifically showing off these siege battles, basically like not only taking down some of these, you know, giant heads of these opposing orc armies, but taking down their big strongholds as well, and then taking them over. So all of this stuff was randomized, and so it was fun to check out this demo and then go to other stations and see little subtle differences in what their generals were like, and, you know, when you went into the final throne room and fought the big boss, kind of like what that boss looked like, and, you know, what his style was, if he was ranged or more into magic or was riding on a beast, or so all the play experiences were varied. This is one of those games, kind of reminds me of Horizon Zero Dawn, where you have to be extremely agile. There's lots of more really powerful things that you can do, but you have to be very comfortable and used to them. And leading into this game, I've been playing, you know, obviously Horizon this year, but a lot of Zelda. And so I had, you know, both of those control schemes kind of, you know, combating each other in my head. And so then I go in, I'm like, oh, right, Middle Earth, and like remembering, you know, how that bow works and, you know, how to dodge, and basically had like the flow of combat. But I enjoyed that it was difficult, and there was a lot of stakes in there because there were a lot of different stages of this siege. And so while I definitely found what I felt was the right critical path, and so I didn't want to experiment too much because I definitely wanted to get through it, I think I failed 3 times, at least twice. And one of the things that was really frustrating is if you haven't played Middle-earth, one of the things that's really great about you know, they try to shape that first game and the second game as these big grand narratives, and they do work, and you definitely do make the story your own. But, you know, for me, it wasn't kind of as grand and romantic and sweeping. It was really frustrating in a good way, that first game, because there was some guy named like Tootle or something. It was the orc just had like the dumbest name in the world, and I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he killed me and then leveled up because of that. And then this person was just like a thorn in my side throughout the entire game, and it cracked me up because this was just some dumb orc, and he was given a random visage and a random, you know, set of strengths and weaknesses and weapon types, and thrown out into this world, and the two of us just happened to clash, and that was going to be my nemesis. And my nemesis in this demo was a bard. So it's this little short orc that would sing songs and was a little annoying, you know, and again just happened to catch me when my guard was down and took me out, and got promoted, and then I think took me out again, or it's really interesting going in through, you know, doing the siege, and there's a lot of different tactics that I didn't do. There's a lot of, different types of units that you can bring in that you can select before you start the siege, that I didn't try. But it was interesting that, like, I definitely had my sights set for this guy. I'm like, I can potentially skip some of these parts to just go straight to the end, but I gotta find that bard, and I gotta kill that bard, because, man, death by bard is brutally embarrassing. But Shadow of War is great. I enjoyed it. I think you will enjoy it if you have played the one previously. It looks pretty darn intense. Again, it was just this one slice of the world. And so one thing I'm really curious about is, like, I think the only thing that I'm not super optimistic about going into Shadow of War is its Mordor. How far outside of Mordor are we going? How varied is this world really going to be? Contextually, how much is this really going to make sense within the world of Middle-earth before you really start to bend the lore so much that it almost breaks? I don't know. Maybe I can just have fun running around and taking over castles and chopping off heads. Played Ni no Kuni II, Revenant Kingdom. Did not play the first Ni no Kuni. Really enjoyed Ni no Kuni II. There were a couple of gameplay sections. Specifically, there were 2 boss battles. Enjoyed the boss battles. One of them was fun because I had some partners. Again, I had partners in both, but one was tricky because there's just a lot of crazy fire effects and different stages to it. I got to watch the battles being played before I jumped into them, and so I didn't have a lot of trouble with them. Once you again, it's a type of game where you and I don't know what like difficulty that I was playing on, but if you're very patient in a battle and you're very experienced with not necessarily turn-based, but just kind of like arena-based multi-character RPGs that have like combat systems that way. I wish I could be more in-depth about Ni no Kuni 2, but the one thing that I really enjoyed about Ni no Kuni 2, boss battles were fun. But the part that really took my breath away is there's one part where it was the second part of the demo. It was a 2-part demo that I checked out, that we were at like a little helipad, a little airport, and we were going to get in little planes and then fly those over to the trial where the king needed to fight a boss and then prove himself as a king. And there were all these planes set up, and a couple of them were in operation. There were a bunch of NPCs, and there's this, like, cool wind that's just blowing over because we're like in a canyon, and if you like look over the edge, the rocky canyons just kind of like drop into like disappear in the clouds, and the aesthetic was just absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous. I mean, like, the realization of this very specific animation that they do was incredible. It felt like I was like walking around in a cutscene, and I mean, it was just it's the reason why I'm kind of downplaying some of the earlier boss parts is because I was able to beat them without strategizing too much, but I think that was because I wasn't really going to dive into the abilities because I wasn't going to get to play really the rest of the game. And so I'm like, I'm going to use the abilities that are given to me right now, and I don't really need to like specialize, this experience if I can just, survive this and not walk into places that are glowing and on fire. But the part where I completely put on the brakes and was just running around and really enjoying the world was just this really simple part that had no specific story to it, but I was just absolutely captivated by, how gorgeous that world was. So, combat, great. World, fantastic. Ni no Kuni 2, Revenant Kingdom. I don't know if that is going to be the entirety of the demo that they're going to have at E3, or if you're going to be able to check out other stuff, but that's what I checked out at Judges Week. Played Total War Warhammer 2. And Not necessarily a Warhammer fan, not necessarily a Total War fan, but really enjoyed the Total War demo because we had a lot of time to play it. I played it twice. You played as lizard men, which was really fun. There were some elves that were going into the lizard's world, and they were trying to stop a elemental thing from destabilizing, and so they were like trying to steal stuff from the lizards, and the lizards were like, hey, that's our thing, get away from here, elves. And so you just kind of get to run in as all these different like dinosaurs and lizard types and just like smack the crap out of elves, and I really enjoyed that so much I played it twice. What I really enjoyed is the, and again, if you're a huge Total War fan, if you're a huge Warhammer fan, if you played the first game, and this seems really obvious to you, apologies, but really enjoyed how much you could zoom into the action and zoom out, and the scenarios really held up. They had a big wide open tour that they did of the open world that you can go around, and it's kind of like an overworld, and so it was neat zooming into one of these specific places that we could see its placement among other locations in the world, and then being able to, you know, completely rotate the camera and get as close to the action as you wanted, or, you know, as far out and, you know, kind of like eagle eye, you know, see the whole battlefield at a glance. Project Cars 2 was at Judges Week, and was probably one of the most extensive demos that I got to play that entire time. I mean, there was more to do, there were more tracks to see, more cars to select, more modes available than you could possibly check out in the entire time that I was at the Bandai Namco event, even if, you know, I was to not play any of the other games. And they had various different types of setups for Project Cars 2. So they had several stations that you could just go up and jump on a machine and play the game. They also had 2 PCs that were set up to little gaming chairs, like little gaming chairs with speakers in them. Very simple versions, you know, just kind of like snug things you could sit in with the steering wheel. But they also had the big hardcore, like, the cars moving with you VR setup, and the little setups that I got into with the little racing wheels were also in VR, and I got to do that in the Oculus, and that was very interesting. Doing a racing game in VR, that was the first time. Got a little rumbly in my tummy, but just once I got comfortable with it. It's fascinating playing a racing game in VR because all sorts of weird stuff becomes a factor that you don't really think of before, and one is, if I'm in a car and I'm going downhill, when the car first starts to go downhill, I need to like move my head down because I'm looking at the top of the car. So if I'm keeping my head in the same position and the hood of the car drops down because my car is going, you know, downhill. And so that was interesting. You know, I thought what would be really cool would be to like look over the side at people to the left and right of me. But when you're actually in there, when you're actually inside of a car, it's really tough to, you know, keep your eyes off the road, or it's tough to take your eyes off the road. So it was a little tricky in VR to look around and drive at the same time. And I'm not super fantastic at racing games, but like I said, there's a ton of options, and I always appreciate that at E3, especially a month before E3 at Judges Week, to show up and be like, this is a game that's extremely extensive. These are all the things that we feel are ready. There's all sorts of stuff that they're bringing to Project Cars 2. Did a really extensive demonstration, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that stuff online, so you can go check out all the cool stuff that they're doing, how they map tracks to be just ridiculously realistic, you know, down to, you know, accurately depicting stuff, and basically shooting tracks from all sorts of different levels, driving them, and then flying a drone over and taking a picture that way, to all sorts of crazy weather effects and how that can affect different parts of the track. Again, not a racing guy. I'm not going to steal that thunder away from Blood, but played different versions of Project Cars 2 and loved them. Played Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown on the PlayStation VR, which I was scared to do because I'm a little hit or miss when it comes to VR, and when I'm at an event like this where I'm going to be playing several games after the appointment that I'm currently at, I get scared because I'm like, I hope I don't get sick, and then if there's more VR, I won't be able to do it, or if there's, you know, really tasty sliders that I want to eat, my tummy's all rumbly, I won't be able to try them. But I was like, heck, there's all these fun games here at the Bandai Namco event, I should check out Ace Combat 7. Checked it out, didn't get sick, loved it. Ace Combat 7, Ace Combat is a series that I have not played a lot of. I thought, okay, like best case scenario is I won't get sick, but it'll be really hard to, you know, like pick targets and stuff like that because it's just PSVR, and PSVR doesn't look as good as the Vive or the Oculus, and I don't know if I'll be able to really see targets in the environment, you know, depending on how the HUD operates and stuff, and like could totally see them, and it felt like Top Gun. It was really neat to you know, kind of with my whole body, feel, you know, the direction that I needed to go to, you know, track targets. And there were a lot of instances where I'll be, you know, playing a flying game, even in like old like Star Wars flight games like Shadows of the Empire or TIE Fighter, when something would fly out of range, or like Rogue Squadron, and I'm like, all right, I just gotta like fly that way and just kind of hope that it pops back in my range, because I don't know, did it go that way, or is it like right behind me? And it definitely does help in situational awareness in a fighter jet when you're in VR, where like I can tell right away something flies past me. I can just look to my left and see like, okay, oh no, it's back that way, and I can react just a little bit faster. So that was interesting. Again, the highest compliment I can give a VR game. Went in terrified that I was going to be sick, walked out satisfied and convinced that that is a game that is improved with VR. I don't know if it's worth playing the entire thing in VR, but the part of it that I played was very fun. I would love to check that out again. Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, spiritual successor to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I was at the 505 Games event, and I can't say any bad things about this game because I love Symphony of the Night, and this game, it can potentially be a negative thing to really just point directly at a game and say, if you like that game, you're going to like this. But that is the case here. This is, in many ways, Symphony of the Night. I mean, a lot of the characters have changed, obviously. Contextually, the story is very different. You know, kind of an interesting setup with, you know, having magical powers and being imbued with magical powers and kind of being cursed with them, and the story kind of explores that, but didn't really get a sense of the story, just kind of got a huge, you know, taste of the gameplay, and they had a demo that I got to play twice because we had the time and it was available, and I'm really excited about this game. Got to fight a boss, which we didn't get to do last year. Other than the boss, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe we got to play a boss at the demo from E3 last year that I got to play on the show floor. The demo was kind of similar. The world seemed kind of similar to the stuff that we'd seen a year ago. Makes me a little nervous with how, you know, uniquely that the budget was constructed for, you know, Bloodstained. And so I hope development on that game is going well. But if it was the first demo of Bloodstained I'd ever played, I would have nothing but glowing things to say about that game. One thing I definitely appreciated in the demo that they showed off was there were lots of different weapons to choose from. There were lots of drops that were happening, and so it was really easy to get a sense of like how your abilities work, and it was just kind of like a really quick crash course in all the different stuff you can do with that game. I don't know if that's the way the final game is going to be set up, but if you love any of those, if you love Symphony of the Night, or if you loved any of those games on the DS or Game Boy Advance, you'll be able to just jump right into this thing and tear it up and be like, yes, I'm home again. From the sound effects to the music to the fonts to the way the HUD is set up. I mean, it's a very direct reference to games that I love very dearly, so I believe you will love them too. The Last Day of June is a game that I feel is best described as the first 10 minutes of Up. I don't know if you've ever seen Up by Pixar. It's just that over and over and over again. It's just kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, you like these people? They're dead. Oh, you like that story? It's awful. But in the best way and with the best intentions. Just a very emotional story about loss, about trying to change the past, about not, you know, coming to terms with things, and about just everything going wrong, you know, to all the nicest people in the world. And it's a puzzle game. It's an exploration game. We just got to see the first part of it. I'm not sure what exactly you are going to get to see at E3, but it was fun to play that game, and I'm curious to... That game definitely had a very specific stop. It was a bummer because, like, the demo people were watching like hawks, and they would come running up and be like, okay, stop. Like, you've hit the point where the game kind of, you know, starts to get nuts. But one of the things I liked about Last Day in June is there's no specific dialogue in the game. There's just like characters talking to each other, but they're very expressive, and there's a lot of instances where you get to explore similar environments as multiple characters, and so it's interesting to see just with a like reactions like that, how they feel about certain things and certain people and objects and places. And so it looks like a story that can only be told a very specific way, and I'm very excited to see that story take shape. Two more games. One is Laser League, which was from the developers of Ollie Ollie, I believe, 1 and 2. And this is like a top-down sports game. Kind of feels like Tron. Kind of feels like American Gladiator a little bit, and there's just all sorts of crazy barriers that are flying around, and they have two different colors, and you can activate, your color. So if you get to one, then you'll activate it as your color, and it'll spin around in whatever direction is set up. There's all sorts of different layouts of how the battlefield can go. So it's, like in Tron, imagine like when I'm on the bike and I would drive around and then you would crash into my tail if like you're the red bike and I'm the green bike, and you crash in the green wall and you're dead. So it's kind of like that. Imagine like American Gladiator, and I can just make green walls and they're going to go flying around the world at you and you have to dodge. So it's like a little bit of kind of the twitchiness of Geometry Wars, but a fun multiplayer game. Not something that I needed a ton of time with to understand, and may not be necessarily a game that I'm really going to be competitive with when it comes out. But it was interesting. It was very flashy. It definitely had a very like high, WWE like grand sports aesthetic. Taking place in a future that is just absolutely in love with the sport. Kind of reminded me of The Running Man a little bit, just kind of that like over-the-top showmanship. So I'm curious to see how much depth there is in that game, because there are only a couple of modes that we got to check out at the 505 Games event. And finally, I want to talk about a game that I'm excited about because it speaks to me. It's right up my alley. It's a game that I actually got to check out 2 years ago when I was a judge, 2 years ago. That was, again, back at E3, and it was a bummer because I didn't get to play it, and that is Fortnite. And Fortnite is a game from Epic Games, and it is a survival game and a construction game, and I love survival, and I love construction, and it puts those two things together. Basically, they wanted to capitalize on the feeling that you had as a kid when you would be up in your treehouse, and all the make-believe monsters were going to come in to get you, and you had to build like the best treehouse to protect stuff. And it is an interesting world. There's very specific characters that you play as in very specific classes. Some are better at building things. Some are better at more melee range. Some can, sense enemies coming faster. Some are better at like long range. Some are just like better for demolition. And again, didn't get to play it. Not a game I've spent a lot of time with, but there's a lot of fun creativity to how you build the maps in this game, and how you construct the things you need to build, because you have to protect a specific object. And so all of these kind of Pixar-y looking zombies are going to come running in, and you have to take all of them out. And the one thing that was validated for me at E3 with Fortnite that I was excited about was when I first saw it, I was excited. I'm like, yeah, it's an action game, so I'm getting like assault rifles and I'm attacking zombies. But the characters looked very, looked and felt very cartoony, and the enemies that I was fighting were very cartoony, and so it didn't really have that that oomph. It didn't really feel. Again, I haven't played it. It didn't really feel like it had a ton of impact, and it definitely felt like there was. It was packing more in that regard, the demo that I got to see at Judges Week. And it, definitely looked like a more complete game, visually looked better, and it just looked like a lot of the things in the game, from, things that will just like sneak up on you and have like crazy gas attacks, or like pick you up and throw you, or will, obviously come like smashing through your defenses if you're not around and you don't protect them. All of that the stakes seem to be a little bit higher. Game looked better, sound better. And so I'm excited to finally get my hands on that game soon, because that's a game that they've been working on for a really long time, but Epic Games does what Epic Games wants, and so hopefully we get our hands on that not too long after E3. But those are, what I would consider the most AAA games that I got to play during Judges Week. So obviously there's a ton of games that are going to be around at E3 from all sorts of different developers, Activision, Square Enix, Bethesda, lots of people that I didn't get to mention here. But again, Judges Week is what I think is evolving into is this great opportunity for a lot of these developers to say, hey, I didn't get the chance to show up at E3 and get eyes on my project as much as other developers would have. That I got to be honest, if there's 500 games at E3, we're going to be like, 324. And so I would just love, before all the really, really exciting stuff happens, before you get to play that Mario game, before Elder Scrolls 7 is announced or whatever, that you take a little bit of time, check out our game, and get a frame of reference on that now. And so when you look back at E3, it will include these early conversations that we had before the show. It will include these embargoes that were lifted, coming up weeks before the show. And of course, this amazing Judges Week event that I got to go to a month ago. Thank you to our wonderful patrons for allowing that to happen. and to, of course, all of our fans on Twitch and YouTube. So that is it for part 2. So that's a lot of games that we've gone through so far. There are a handful of games that I will mention in part 3, which will be a lot shorter than the first 2, that just have very late embargoes. That a lot of VR stuff as well, that I will talk to specifically in part 3. So thanks for watching, everybody. Happy E3.